Hi, listeners. We've got a great show for you today, talking about inspired wealth. And, it's interesting. We all have these things about money, scarcity, lack, or shame. And then some people don't have those things. So we're going to talk about where that stems from, how we can break through that. And just so you know a little bit about our guest, she'll tell more as we do the show. Her name is Dr. Janice Hughes. She's a leader, a teacher, an author, and a coach to thousands of professionals worldwide. She provides personal and professional coaching services for Wow Coach. She's authored multiple books and audio presentations on values, attraction, and prosperity. One of her books, Success Comes From You, Not To You, Inspired Wealth, Financial Leadership for the 21st Century, and the list goes on and on and on. So we're excited to pick her brain today and get into what she shares as the really great, abundant mindset that we all need to adopt in order to live at peace and live in the flow with money. Thanks for joining us.
To the extent that we live our lives in a manner that is consistent with the truth in our heart, we thrive.
Welcome to the Meyer Clinics podcast, and you just heard a quote from one of your hosts, Dr. Lisa Day. Join our licensed clinical professionals from various backgrounds as they discuss fascinating mental health topics with a wide range of guests. Meyer Clinics is a Christian counseling organization with multiple clinics nationwide dedicated to treating the whole person, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Welcome to our listening family. We thank you for joining us. Hi, everyone. Kristen Walker here with the Meyer Clinics podcast and my cohort, Dr. Lisa Day. Hello, Lisa.
Oh, good afternoon, Kristen.
And everyone, I'm sure you already heard the intro of who we're speaking to. So I'm just going to say, welcome, Janice, to the Meyer Clinics podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. So, Lisa, this was someone that you heard speak and have been following Janice's work for a long time. And you came to me with, let's have her on the show. So I'm going to pass the mic over to you because I know how you are. You're like, let's get into the questions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm so excited, Janice, to have you because, as we all know, I'm a registered nurse and clinical psychologist, and, my formal training and experience up to coming to your work, your material, and your speaking is really psychopathology, diagnosis, and treatment. And when I first met you over a decade ago at a Master's Circle presentation and listened to your talk and really focusing on inspired wealth, which is what I want to pick your brain about today, it was instrumental in pivoting my practice. So while I definitely do diagnosis, treatment, and treatment planning and that what have you, your book and your approach, and I get goosebumps as I say this, shifted me to come at it from a proactive coaching fashion, meaning let's look inside to use our strengths as we heal the various challenges that come before us. So, whether you know it or not, you were instrumental in shifting how I approach therapy in general and how I've done it since, for the past 20 years.
Well, that's terrific. It's interesting because we all benefit from introspection. I'm going to say that, therapy plays a key role there. For some people, it may not be that they're yet ready for therapy, and it might be books or things like that. But one of the things with the uniqueness of coaching is that coaching then really talks about, well, now, how do you translate that out into your world? So it is that kind of proactive, what am I going to do? What actions am I going to take? And that's the work that I love, is helping people find simple new distinctions or simple new actions so that they can also begin to create that, I'll call it future reality, the changes that they'd love to bring to their world.
Well, and what really spoke to me, because I love that approach, and what really spoke to me is that, goodness gracious, I mean, we all know that finances are one of the major stressors, in life. And it's uncommon, even in my resort town of Sun Valley, Idaho, that I don't find that finances, i.e. money, are a major contributor to a current stressor, whether it's the thing that brings to therapy or it's one of the things that contributes to it. But, one of the things that I love, and this is, straight from your book, Inspired Wealth, is that you view money as an energy source. And rather than something that we, hold on to, hoard, or are afraid of. I wonder if you can elaborate on that money is an energy source.
Absolutely. From my perspective, there is, a cycle. Like when we give of our energy, when you create a product and you put that out into the world, part of like giving out is also that willingness to accept. And so it's this flow. And if we can see that money or a product we create, or, again, a barter system, some people barter, for their services or the things that they're wanting in their life, they give something to someone else that has meaning to them. Like, if you can really start to understand that it is just this flow, you can see it's an energy source. And that, I think, starts to take some of the stigma away from the barter system, money, dollars, the euro, like whatever form of currency that is, and just says, okay, well, how can I understand that or tap into that? Number one, so that I can attract more. Or even for people that say have wealth, what am I doing with that? What am I seeding out into the world? And I think if we could really understand that piece, there would be less charge around money.
And the other thing that I see, with that, and I love that exchange, that movement, that it's a flow, it's a part of our movement and energy of life, because I often find that, you can find it on two ends of the extremes. And, I had talked earlier about John Frederick's book, How to Make One Hell of a Profit and Still Get to Heaven. And, I find that so often people have this conflict between having money and making money or being rewarded for their services. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I see people who are defined by their money. They're just going to show and talk about what they have. And, with regard to that conflict of how to generate an income and how to, manifest, if you will, abundance and still be able to make it to heaven or still be okay with yourself. I wonder if you can speak a little bit to that conflict.
Well, it's so interesting because we put a label on money. A lot of it, our belief patterns, our belief systems are really formulated by the time we're anywhere from 6 to 8 years old. And so what starts to happen is our even charges or beliefs or concepts around money are really formed so early in life. And you can start to see that probably means they aren't our own. They'll be based on our parents or significant people in our lives. And then we start to almost like get stuck with that. So a lot of people have grown up and or still see money as something negative. It might even be that, you've got to work so hard to generate that. And, let's look out in the world. There's some people just with fabulous ideas. It's like they're selling the invisible and they attract money. So does it have to be hard? I grew up, money didn't grow on trees was a sort of a pattern or something that I found deep inside of me. And, you can start to see that there are these charges even around the word. And it's interesting, after all these years and all the different work and ways of looking at this in my own life, I really feel that money is a reflection of our self-worth.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because my chiropractor girlfriend who invited me to that master's seminar years ago, she said, Lisa, and this was imprinted on my mind as a child. Absolutely. She said, Lisa, I'm so tired of listening to you say, I can't afford it, then doing it anyway, and then feeling guilty that you've done it, whether it's a vacation, a car, new running shoes. And she invited me to change my perspective, my relationship, if you will, with money. And I remember, pivotal, your work, her confrontation, I no longer, even to this day, I don't say I can't afford it. I say that is not in my budget, or I'm not able to make that happen at this time. But it's not that kind of end all drawing, line in the sand of I can't afford it, which was imprinted. It's an automatic thought from my childhood.
Right. And to shift that for any of us as we start to take a look at those habits, patterns, belief systems, then that coach in me says, well, then what are we going to do about it? It's one thing to recognize it. And so what you described is that through your friend, almost like confronting you to have you really take a look at that, then it was, well, what can I replace that with? Or sometimes I think, if we're not careful, we begin to quickly self-judge. Oh gosh, I always think that, or I'm never going to change that, and instead could we just say, wow, there it is again. I choose not to believe that anymore.
Yeah. Remember that thing?
Almost then pivoting into some kind of action. I'm a really big advocate of affirmations. And for me, I laugh because so many people around me say, oh, Janice, you've coached so many people, or, you must have this stuff figured out. And it's like, well, no, actually, I still hire coaches in my life, to help me take a look at these kinds of things, because I think we all tend to have that self-judgment. Remember, I said it's all about self-worth, and so if we could switch into what could I say differently? Even it's almost too big a jump, for somebody to go, I have nothing, to then start to pretend or say, oh, I'm wealthy, because your brain is screaming, not at all, versus if you say, I'm studying wealth habits. I am gifting myself the opportunity to learn new things about money. I am shifting my money mindset. That's so much more empowering, and you notice that it's now not being said in judgment.
Right. I look at some people that I've seen in my life where their tendency, and I had to look at, well, okay, how am I playing a role here? Because they are in my life. So part of me attracted this experience.
Yes.
And I would have, let's say a woman come in with seemingly a lot of money, and I call them a checkbook with no sense people. They're just spending it on, ridiculous things, throwing it away, constantly arguing with people about nickeling and diming everybody that are around them, all this stuff. And what I took from the last time this person was in my life a very short time, what I took from it was, okay, so I don't need to feel, how do I look at this? I felt less than this person because the way they presented themselves. That's something for me to look at. Why would I feel less than someone else just because of how much money they say they have? So that was something to look at. And then also, it made me very proud at the end of it. Well, look at what I spend my money on. Really great things. So there's no need to compare myself to someone with a mansion or not a mansion at all, because I'm proud of what I choose to spend it on. That was a fascinating piece to come to, a place of empowerment instead of where I usually have gone in the past, which was shame.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of it for the listeners is remembering that some people that are so busy out there spending, literally, it's still the self-worth issue. Like, they don't have a strong self-worth, or they're looking at stuff to fill a void, and this really links with values work. It's kind of interesting because I don't have a financial background. Even as I wrote the book Inspired Wealth, it was really putting a coaching approach to money and looking at things in my own life. So it's not like I'm some financial person, but recognizing one of the things I do a lot as a coach is work with people on their value systems. Because literally what you were saying, Lisa, is that like part of that lesson for you was seeing I choose to put my dollars to things that really matter to me, things that I really value. And that shifts that whole relationship with money, versus spending. I kind of have a statement that I like to use in my own life, if I'm going to go to purchase something, how will I feel about this in 10 minutes? How will I feel about this in 10 days? And more importantly, how will I feel about this in 10 months?
Hmm. I like that.
Are these things that fuel me? And every personality is different. So the same thing, you can't judge yourself that because I put my money here, it's better or less than what someone else does, because it's such a very personal thing. A lot is about personality profiles. Once you understand yourself or your personality or work with a great coach on those kinds of things, it helps you turn around and say, what are the things that matter the most to me, which is your values? And then how do I put my money, time, energy into those things that I value? And we just start to feel different. That builds a fulfilled life.
Well, and I think one of the things that you capitalize on your book, and I think you even have a title of the chapter, and something that I think that Kristen's done enough podcasts with me to know that this is who I am. But in your book, and a statement that we all know and live by, is that the truth shall set you free.
Yes.
And I know that in my work, I'm always teaching what is the truth in your heart, and to what extent am I living in a manner consistent with that truth? Because I believe that's where we thrive. Unlike if we don't know the truth in our heart, we have anxiety, or if we live in a manner that's inconsistent with that truth, we have chaos and drama. So what I'm hearing is that, with the values, we need to go in, what is my truth? What is important? With Kristen, the time that you spend with Secret, which Secret is her beautiful horse, or for me, adventures, that what's important is that we know our truth and then, allow our values to be clarified from there.
Completely. And I look back to sometimes the amount of money that I would put into, my husband and I learned to sail at the same time. We both had very different interests in our lives. And so then sailing was something that we learned together. We would put money and time to pre-plan some sailing vacations. And what that represented, even an accountant said to me, wow, like why are you putting that amount of money into a vacation? And I was like, this is far more than a vacation. It's our connect time. It's something we value incredibly. It's an incredible break. Like that investment was something that had huge meaning to us. And we didn't tend to spend money, what my accountant wasn't seeing until I was really explaining this to him was that we didn't buy each other Christmas gifts, birthday gifts. We basically built, we had a savings account that was our travel account. And so those kinds of trips, like we were investing dollars instead of spending it on some stuff just to gift to each other, putting it in an account. By the time we went on our different sailing vacations or sailing trips, they're already all prepaid, and so it was just like even an accountant or someone like who is really important in my life. He was my bean counter. He was going to help keep me clean and organized with running a practice, with running businesses. But, his judgment about, well, that's too much to spend on something like that. It was like, well, compared to what? So I don't go out and put dollars into a gift that has no meaning for someone, or that, again, is something we don't need right now, versus, putting and investing those dollars into travel. Now, for some of you listening that have no value of travel, that would be the craziest thing for you to do.
I'm sorry, what I like about that, and I think this was a takeaway from your book, and I don't know if it's a verbatim or if it was just one of my internalizations, but when you talk about truths and you talk about values, my takeaway from your book was coming up with a core operating principle for myself. And you talk about, when you're going to purchase something, how are you going to feel in 10 minutes or 10 months or a year? And I know for me, and what I'm hearing from your sailing, is I filter not only money, I actually filter every single thing that I do through the concept of my core operating principle is to have meaningful life experiences with those I love. And Janice, I think that's from you. I think yours had a little bit more on the end of it, but I know for me, when I think, do I need to put a new deck on, or do I want to go to Jamaica with my family? I think which is going to contribute to more meaningful life experiences. And of course, Jamaica is going to do that, right?
Yeah.
I like that, sailing isn't about I'm showing off my sailboat. It's about a time that I'm going to spend with my spouse.
Absolutely. And someone else listening that isn't driven, say, by experiences or travel, your choice of, Jamaica versus a deck, for them, they may, by putting a deck on, have the neighbors, have their kids come, and or outdoor family time, which is of huge value to them. So, again, I think we spend a lot of time not only judging ourselves, but also looking at what other people are doing versus going, well, wait a minute, that's probably just something that really is important to them.
And when we look at that, when we look at what's important to us, in your book again, and I think that we read this in other coaching material as well, you talk about the be, do, have, operating from the inside out. I wonder if you can share with us a little bit about what that means, and maybe we already have, but with regard to money, operating from the be.
Yes, it's really a different framework, because most times, say early in our lives, or if we aren't super conscious about the things we do and decisions we make, we always think in terms of, well, if I do this, then I generate the dollars, or I'll have that, or I can purchase that. Pivoting this model to be, do, have is almost that opposite, that who am I? How do I get clear on these decisions about our values and or concepts around money, so that I do the things that are congruent and therefore attract the things that are most authentic for me. So it's just a very different model. It speaks a lot to that idea of introspection. And I don't want people to always think that when I say that it takes horrendous work, or that means you have to go to therapy or you have to do this. It's just a different framework. So often we are just out there busy doing things or focusing on the things, well, if I then have that, it will fuel this in me. Or this happens a lot. My background as a chiropractor and working with a lot of chiropractors and other health practitioners. A lot of times it's, as they're building their practice or working on, their careers. Well, once I do all of this, then I'll have more time to do this other thing that I'd really love to do. But pivoting to this be, do, have model is more the clarity of, maybe it doesn't mean, so for you wanting experiences, that doesn't mean you're not going to be in your practice or helping a lot of people. It just means that building more regular experiences in, and it doesn't always have to be big trips, but by doing some things now, I get that feeling and I have that peace fueled in my life so that I can actually attract more new, different things and opportunities. So it's a very different framework.
Hi, this is Dr. Paul Meyer of the Meyer Clinics. Our Christian counselors across the country have a goal of helping all those who come to us to become what God has called them to be. If you're in a situation where you're not at peace within yourself, or you just feel like there's joy that's missing in your life, we can come alongside to help you obtain peace and joy.
This message is sponsored by the Meyer Clinic Foundation, a nonprofit Christian counseling ministry. The number is 1-888-7-CLINIC, 1-888-7-CLINIC.
Well, and the other thing that I like about it, and as I look at it, sometimes I'll go in reverse, and this is, both with myself, but certainly with my clients, is that I think that sometimes, and I refer to it of the book of shoulds written by they say you should. And I think that people start with the haves, and they think if I have a house, a car, a camper, a cabin, then I will be happy. That they do it in reverse, that I have to have these check marks and that will provide me happiness. And, inviting people to do it the other way around, of operating in a manner that's consistent with my truth or my be, and allowing that to dictate what I do, then I will have all that there is to offer in life. And so, coming back, that perhaps that trip to Jamaica wouldn't make someone happy, or having that house wouldn't make someone happy. But I invite people to turn from the, what is it that I need to have in order to be happy? Or what do they say? That many people think that I need to have success in order to be happy. And the reverse is actually true, that success is a byproduct of being happy.
Yes, yes. And, the same thing though, because this is all so much about our self-worth and our self-discovery, not getting into the shoulds and coulds that, oh my gosh, I've got to get this all figured out today. I keep coming at my coaching perspective is, what's my next simplest action step? So is it that you could really just make a decision that here's something that has me really feel that happiness, and I could do it a few minutes every day. If it's somebody that loves great literature, instead of saying, oh, only once I get these projects done, am I going to be able to actually just sit and dive into a book? Could it be that you've got the book with you so that while you're waiting for an appointment and that there's going to be 5 to 10 minutes, that's when you're reading? Is it that, some people, myself included, more driver type A personalities, it used to be that I felt a lot of the shoulds about how to meditate, or that, again, for me, it was about sitting and, literally, doing the more traditional meditations. And my personality, if I'm not careful, I could be sitting there, going over my grocery list in my mind when I'm supposed to be quiet and meditating, versus this morning early before coming into my office to do some things. And then this podcast, I have a big dog, and one of the most fulfilling things for me is even taking him out. There's a small little community that surrounds this little lake, probably maybe 10-minute drive from where I live. And to take him out there, and even if it's the dead of winter, and I'm bundled up, just that serenity or that environment and the outdoors, it's almost for me that I do a walking meditation.
I like that.
So you can start to see that, how do we capture little bits of those things? So Kristen, I hear that, again, it's your horse, or, again, Lisa, the bit I know with you, about experiences, like for you, you can juice the orange, for you could go for coffee with someone great, or that's why you love podcasting, because that's basically like an experience, connecting or asking someone questions, and so the more we get that, it's like, wow, I have the opportunity to bring that, to be happy and love that. Now, we still probably have to go home and clean our kitchen, or we need to go into the office or into the practice and do certain things, but even just bringing some of that happiness and fulfillment a few moments every day. Or if you have a crazy career or job, just where in your week, though, could you begin to build some spirit time?
Well, and I love that, because this morning, before we're coming in for the podcast, Kristen and I are on the phone. I'm walking the dogs, and it could have been any day where Kristen's out with her horse nuzzling her derriere as they're walking through the field. And, the importance of that, of how that fuels us to do the other things in our life, the importance of knowing what we're passionate about and what fuels us. And it certainly is amazing. The other question I have, and I think this is something that we talk about, and Kristen, you and I talk about this, is that, when we're on this journey of our relationship with money, or if we're on this journey with relationship with self, I like your comment about creating versus competing. And I that definitely ties into the be, do, have. But I wonder if you would speak to, and Kristen, I know you and I talk about this often, that we're driven by the passion of our work. Our passion drives our purpose. But where is that the competing can cause us, hurdles or obstacles?
Well, competing is all about that if they have that, I can't have it. Or if those dollars go over there, there's limited dollars. And it's basically like the opposite of collaborating, more passion-driven projects, and I realize that we all need to say, okay, well, what is our basic nut, say, per month or per year for us to be generating? Or, if we're not at a level that, we would love to be financially, okay, well, where are we? How do we manage some of that? But in beginning to recognize that we're not competing with someone else. That it isn't a competition, that there aren't limited resources. And a lot of that is we might have at certain stages some limited resources, but can we tap into, I just call it that abundance, abundance thinking and abundance of opportunities. So I tease a lot of people just about thinking about abundance, that, there are no shortage of resources. There actually is no shortage of money out there. It's that often the money is just concentrated into, say, a few homes or a few industries. But if we can get over that competing, or, that if it goes over there, then there's not going to be enough for me, it really begins to shift the way we think, what kinds of projects we look at, the people we attract to collaborate with. And I find it, a lot, I'll keep coming back to, what does this mean daily? And so instead of thinking, if I give this idea, somebody else is going to run with that and build a business, or, instead of, helping them, I better figure out whether this is something I could just do. I find if we pivot to the opposite, how can I help you? What kind of ideas can I throw out there? One of the things with my newest project, To Inspire Women, it's really interesting in the health professions, and we're just seeding out a lot of free resources. And so a lot of people are very skeptical. Well, what's that about? If I give you my email, now am I going to get 40 emails from you? We really even haven't figured out what we will do and create next. We know that by seeding and helping a lot of people, a lot of practitioners, number one, we're really fulfilled doing that. We're setting a whole new standard. And I really truly believe that we're going to find some interesting collaboration and partnerships and things that will allow us to figure out the what's next for this new company.
Well, and Kristen, doesn't that just sound cornerstone to your operating system?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every time I bring on a new podcaster, or, and we do another initiative, I think I've had people say, well, you should really be running this as a nonprofit, because that's how you operate. You just give all this stuff away. And I'm like, okay, I can look at that. I can look at what you're saying about that, but this is who I am. This is what I enjoy doing. And I can't imagine spending the money that I bring in any other way that would be more fulfilling.
Mm-hmm. That's very values driven.
Well,
Yes.
And I look at too, Kristen, just coming to know you, I think it was last June or so, and you being so gracious to help me navigate this skill and this new passion. But in that process, the collaboration with social media awareness and the Frank Kings of this world and the suicide awareness, and then where does that stem into, writing protocols for treatment? And when it's Kristen and I often talk that, everybody can talk at the same time. We all know what everybody is saying, and we're so passionate, we can't keep up with the ideas that are helpful and nothing but giving and contributing to the well-being of others. And I like that movement that you have, Janice, because it speaks true to, I think, where we come from as well.
Absolutely.
And it's okay to eat. And it's okay to be able to pay your bills, even though you're a giver. And it's okay to even have surplus.
Absolutely, because that's that flow. When we really are giving those ideas and collaboration and things out there, for us to be willing to receive, for us to say, I'm absolutely embracing the receiving end.
Well, and the other thing, one of the things I think that we feel embarrassed when we do, right? I mean, one of my comments to Kristen is that, in the work that we do, and it just seems to like a snowball, the more you start giving, the more you have opportunities to contribute and give to those in need. And oftentimes people will say, well, what are you making? How much money are you making? Is that a profitable experience? And I chuckle because that's not even on the radar. The radar is the passion and being able to generate it. But what I do find is that when you do find, or you come to a place where you are rewarded for the work that you do, even in, say, my practice, I think that some people shy away from that, or for some strange reason, they experience a borrowed shame or a guilt that they have been rewarded abundantly. And I think it's a change of thought, thought set or mindset on that.
Absolutely. Because, ultimately it's, then we're not embracing that flow. We're not embracing that, money equals energy, and it's not always going to be that we receive in the form of currency, but that's a really good thing to receive the currency as well, and so, sometimes it is just the fulfillment of a project, or you meet someone new, or your entire career trajectory changes, because of something. And, then just like what you were saying, Lisa, when we had met at a seminar and that really pivoted some things for you, that company and the work I did there really created and pivoted my entire life. And, after all of that, I ended up with an opportunity to raise money for a biotech startup. And that is the last place I would have ever envisioned myself being. But that came out of, I think, the interactions with you and so many other thousands of people at those seminars and programs, and got me into a place. So I received a lot, even though people would say, oh, I was traveling and there was a lot of craziness at that phase with raising a family. I had 3 boys and that sort of chaos and traveling for seminars. But wow, the amazing things that I've received, basically like a whole new trajectory for my own career.
Which is awesome. And something we talked about too the other day is, where do we move, in that middle age time, so it's when you're open to that growth, that it just keeps coming in abundantly. One of the things I also, I think that sometimes people have a hard time when we talk about money or finances, inspired wealth and abundance and what have you, and you comment again on it in your book about letting go and eliminating. And I think of that as eliminating of thoughts that don't serve us and people that don't serve us, or I'm always looking for like-minded people who energize me because they help fuel my passion to do what's consistent with my truth. But I do know that people, when they are, and lots of people unfortunately are in financial situations that are absolutely disabling to them, and put an overriding cloud on their joy, on their emotional availability, on their connections. And I wonder, what you can speak to, or if you can speak to, when one comes in and they have this schema, I can't be happy, or I can't have relationship, I can't have attachment, I can't have joy because I have this looming incredible debt. That until that debt is, and maybe they've got $50,000 in credit card debt, which is not uncommon, unfortunately, today because of our credit card companies. But when you find someone who has that schema of until this debt is gone, I can't live. Do you have any thoughts or inputs or comments or thought processes that we could share?
Well, we get more of what we think about. And if I liken it, I have a mantra that says thoughts become things. So if we have the debt, I'm not saying we pretend we don't have it, but if all we do is think about debt, focus on debt, get over debt, then that is such an overriding concept. It's like debt is taking over our life. So I'm not saying we don't do some actions or put some things in place. I find this, again, with a lot of the young people in some of the health professions. I mean, some of these young practitioners are coming out of professional school, $250,000 and $300,000 in debt. Now, if it's all about debt and debt reduction, number one, that's a very limiting, and that's hard to attract, or it's hard to make those more abundant decisions. So how do you put some things in place, identifying or working on the debt, but then start to think differently, at least in some of your day, and or put a few wealth building steps in place, for those young professionals. If all they're doing is paying down on debt, that's at the expense of future growth. And I like to give them, one of my secrets that I talk to a lot of these young practitioners about is coming up with a debt to savings ratio. So that, you have to figure out your basic nut first. What is that costing? And some people are already at the limit, because they don't have any extra reserves. So then it's like, well, where or how in my day can I think more abundantly and or start to attract other income? My youngest is a college student and also works. And what he is doing and embracing by those dollars going into his account, he's fueling. He knew that, to have more than his basic budget, he needed to go out and take another action step. So sometimes young, it's okay, what else can I do to generate? But if you are at the limit, it's still, well, then where could I at least set a little bit of time every day that I am focusing on abundance and or idea generation or, skills now that could help me build wealth? Because if all you're thinking about is the debt and that debt becomes so overriding, no wonder you don't have joy. No wonder you're feeling so much more stressed. It's just that everything, all your thoughts are about the debt.
Right.
I know that one of the things that I do personally and I share is that, when we have fears, our immediate response to that is to try to control, and then we can get caught in the shame of being in that debt. And one of the mantras that I meditate on, and I also try to access through the day, and I invite people to access, is that I am united with abundance, clarity, and peace. And therefore, it's not attached specifically to my credit card is paid off, which has a negative connotation to it, but that I choose to unite the core of my spirit with abundance in all areas: abundance of love, abundance of friendship, abundance of wealth, abundance of passion, clarity, that I don't get stuck on a skewed path, and peace, that I can be here now. I can be in the presence, even though I have debt or even though I have these financial losses or crises, that it doesn't define the totality of my character.
Yes. And, a lot of it, and maybe in your show flow notes, we can talk about, we've even done this little free report that is basically just almost like a primer with a bunch of example affirmations about abundance, about wealth. I am embracing these money learning lessons, so that people can find the language that has great meaning for them. What you were just describing, Lisa, is a little esoteric for some people. Some people really just need a statement that says, I am learning to build wealth.
I like that.
So every one of us, based again on personalities, the things that matter the most to us, it's really writing or crafting a few of those affirmations or statements or places that you can at least anchor that help with that, and help shift that consciousness. Even if the reality is that every dollar is going to service debt right now, well, then still, where do we build a few of these new thoughts or attitudes so we can be open to attracting more, or for some people, just being paid more for what you actually already do?
Right. Exactly.
Well, and I think in winding that down, and the last thing that I would want to share is one of your quotes, or at least you quote it, Janice. And what you're saying is that how you live one day is how you live your life. So integrating those concepts here and now in our current present, and the influence that has on our abundance.
Yes.
Well, we could do 18 shows about this topic. I just came up with about 10 more questions that I really want answered. So, Janice, would you come back on or come on one of our other podcasts on the network to further the conversation around this?
I would love to. Yeah, it's just so powerful, isn't it?
Yes.
It is such a deep topic, and that's where, if anyone had said to me that I was going to, write a book about money or speak about money or teach about money, I would have laughed, because for all of the listeners, I described that I really had a broken money mindset. And a lot of that was, I grew up in a family, I tease a lot that there weren't resources. We had an incredible amount of love, but not, financial resources. And so those things really impacted even my choice of career and helping people. I had to learn these same principles, and I am still working on all of this. As I got connected and asked to, be part of a biotech startup and raise money for that, I had to totally upgrade my money mindset. I'm still working on this. So it's a lifetime of learning. And so the same thing though, I started with this is the last topic I thought that I would have been teaching or speaking about. And yet it's because it's so rich, it is so rich with life messages and some potential lessons for us.
Absolutely. Tell our listeners where they can find out more about you.
Well, the newest project and the easiest place to find out it's the number 2. So it's 2inspirewomen.com. And I've partnered with 2 amazing women practitioners, basically focusing on bringing these principles to health and wellness and well-being practitioners, and so bringing some of these concepts, and I represent a lot of the money consciousness piece of that because it is so overriding in things. We've really created a business academy, helping a lot of people find more dollars even within their businesses. I do a lot of complimentary consults for people now, where I'll spend an hour with them and we'll just take a look at their current business and talk about 5 key metrics or facets of business. And I know we consistently find $10,000 or $20,000 that we can recapture in someone's business instantly for them. So those are just a couple of simple ways, and I can make sure you have some of those links.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Lisa, thanks for coming on again with me and doing our podcast.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
And thank you to our listening family for tuning into another episode of the Meyer Clinics podcast. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next time for another engaging discussion on relevant mental health topics. If you have any questions about Meyer Clinics, please visit our website at meyerclinics.com. That's MEIER clinics.com, or call us at 888-7-CLINIC. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps. And please note that we are a member of and produced by Mental Health News Radio Network, MHNRnetwork.com.